Anybody want to trade numbers?
Sorry.
Okay, thank you for rejoining us for Candidates Night, the second part of Candidates Night. And now we have our candidates for the council. They are Jamie Lee, running as a Republican, Joshua Lorenz, a Republican incumbent, Allison Holt, a Democrat, Dennis Skiers, a Democrat, and Susan Stewart Blaine, a Democrat. Bain, thank you. We also have Tony Spadaro, who could not be here with us tonight, and he did send an opening statement. So I will read it, and you may cut me off when my time is up. I was a graduate of East Pittsburgh High School. I started working at an early age and consider myself a self-starter. I am highly motivated to achieve results. I have lived in Murrysville for 52 years now with my wife, who was born and raised in the area. I have 3 children, all who are graduates of Franklin Regional High School, along with 2 granddaughters, one who is attending Franklin now. My career has always been in a supervisory position. I have strong communication skills, and working with people has been my forte. I stress the importance of teamwork and strive under successful conditions. I was employed by Denny's Restaurant Incorporated for 15 years, where I was a regional operations manager and responsible for site selections, budgets, and cost controls, along with sales, projections, and staffing of all management positions. My territory consisted of Western Pennsylvania and parts of Ohio. After Denny's, I was owner of Spadaro's Restaurant in Murrysville for 20 years, having worked and supervised people in a corporate environment as well as an entrepreneur. I feel I have much experience and knowledge to work well with people to achieve mutual results. As a resident and business owner in Murrysville, I have seen Murrysville grow and progress from a small town with a 2-lane highway to a community of 20,000 plus. I feel that we must continue to grow responsibly in the residential community along with the business community under the guidelines of our ordinances. If I am elected to council, I will strive to use all my knowledge and experience to assure that Murrysville continues. And my time is up, so thank you, Tony. Our next opening remark will be made by Dennis Skiers. Mr. Skiers.
My name is Dennis Skiers. My wife Lisa and I have lived in Murrysville for 12 years. In that time, we have formed close friendships, solid roots, and a real sense of belonging to a community. I am running for council because I believe that as the beneficiary of many blessings in life, I have a responsibility to take part in helping to maintain, sustain, and improve society. Last year, I retired from Westinghouse Electric Company after working nearly 40 years in the field of power plant instrumentation and control systems. The skills and capabilities I used in my work at Westinghouse equipped me well to help guide municipal government, and having retired, I have the time available to give the task the attention it deserves. The most compelling issues facing Murrysville relate to rational, sustainable development. This has been perennially true, certainly for as long as we have been here. In the past, this is related mostly to residential and business development. Today, as reflected by the amount of time current council has devoted to the subject, a significant development issue is Marcellus Shale gas extraction. In each case, finding the right balance of growth, development, and preservation is critical to the long-term health of Murrysville. In my time on council, I want to contribute to finding that balance. I will work to see that the recently completed comprehensive plan is implemented, or where necessary, that it is revised and improved. Skills I will bring to bear to this task are critical thinking, a questioning attitude, application of logic and reason, and a collaborative spirit.
Thank you. Ms. Holt.
Good evening, and many thanks to AAUW for hosting this forum. My name is Allison Sharp Holt, and I've been a Murrysville resident for 24 of my 42 years. My parents moved here when I was a toddler, and I'm a Franklin Regional graduate. After attending Stanford University and working in Silicon Valley, my husband and I moved back about 9 years ago. I have deep roots here. My parents have lived here for 41 years, and my 4 young children are growing up here. I'm running for council because I want to ensure a healthy future for all of Murrysville. Maintaining Murrysville's character and charm depends on prudent oversight by council. Murrysville has strengths to maintain, including safe neighborhoods, low taxes, and a great reputation, but it also has challenges to address, including an aging population and infrastructure upkeep. I believe the tax burden should be kept low and the budget lean while maintaining our roads, police, and core services. Community initiatives should encourage volunteerism and fundraising whenever possible to foster a sense of ownership among residents. I support keeping our commercial corridors attractive to small to mid-sized businesses. I also support protecting our parks and green spaces, which will become even more precious as Murrysville becomes more built out. And with regards to Marcellus gas drilling, I will advocate for an ordinance that protects the health, welfare, and safety of all of our residents. Murrysville is a jewel of a town, and I will work hard to protect its future. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lee.
Every day I ask myself, what is the purpose of life? And I don't know if anybody has figured that out. But very simply, I believe that the purpose of life is to use the talents and the gifts that God gave us and to position ourselves to serve others. And that's exactly why I'm running for council and why I'm so grateful to the AAUW and to all of you who probably had other things to do on a Friday night for coming and learning about us. Being a product of Murrysville is an incredible feeling. I've spent about 21 years as a Murrysville resident, and I want to give back to the community that gave so much to me. From speaking with folks and considering my own feelings as a homeowner, I feel the biggest issues facing us, of course, are Marcellus Shale, which I'm sure we'll discuss tonight, maintaining our budget, and revisiting zoning in support of smart development. I'm also confident that I have the knowledge and the experience needed to serve, including maybe my best skill, which is the willingness to admit that I don't know everything, and if I don't, that I will ask and I will research until I know. I certainly also have the education and the attitude I feel would benefit Murrysville. Regarding education, I'm a Franklin Regional graduate. I earned my bachelor's degree, summa cum laude, finished my master's degree while working full-time with a 4.0. And beyond my experience serving in other organizations, my technology skills, communication, I'm also currently part of the Murrysville Planning Commission, and we are the recommending body that advises council now, the mayor and the planning department, upon all matters related to planning and development in the municipality.
Thank you. Mr. Lorenz.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks again to the AAUW for hosting this. It's certainly a worthwhile endeavor and something that I know that many of the citizens look forward to every year at election time. So thanks for that. Thanks for everybody who showed up here in person, as well as to everybody who is watching at home. It is, in short, a good time to be a resident of Murrysville. There are a lot of wonderful things that are going on here. And if you drive around, you can see the wonderful parks that we have, and there's more on the horizon there with the Rails to Trails project that is now fully underway. If you look at if you go into the parks, you can see the ball fields and the green spaces, and that's something that many people really go out and enjoy on a regular basis. If you drive up and down our commercial corridors on Route 22. 286, you can see a lot of the businesses, the office space, the restaurants that people have been asking for. Those are really coming into fruition, and again, there's more underway. So again, I think there's a lot to be proud of here in Murrysville, and I'm thankful that in a small way I've been a part of that over the last 3+ years. But there's still more to be done, and that's one of the reasons why I am running for re-election. As far as my skills, I am an incumbent council member, so I do have a familiarity with what the issues facing this municipality are. I was a prior member of the Planning Commission, and before that, I've been a resident here for over 15 years. So I thank you very much for.
Thank you. And Ms. Bain.
Good evening. Thank you to the AAUW for inviting me and hosting this forum. I also want to thank the other candidates for participating. Running for office, as I have found out, is not an easy undertaking. My name is Susan Stewart Bain, and I have been a Murrysville resident for 10 years. I was raised in Greensburg and attended Hempfield and then Seton Hill College for my bachelor's in psychology. I then went to Pitt for my master's in counseling. I began to work in the field of mental health after graduating, and after 4 years at my current agency, I was offered the directorship. This will be my 18th year. My husband and I have 2 boys who both attend Heritage Elementary. I'm running for council because I want to protect those children. Safety and health are my priorities as a parent, and they will be my priorities as a council member. While we recently were named as one of the 100th safest cities in the U.S., safety should not just be related to crime statistics. We need to extend this to our health as it is related to our air and water, and in general, our overall quality of life. We need to continue to slow and steady growth of the past, become a community that, while caring for our aging population, also stays progressive. Where we don't just settle for how things have always been done, but look for new and innovative ways to reach our goals. My job, if elected as your councilwoman, will be to always ask, what is best for the community? I believe my years as a businesswoman have helped me sharpen my financial skills and has given me the resources to be a strong advocate for this community. Thank you.
Thank you. We will begin the first question with the first position, and that's Mr. Skiers. How have you prepared yourself for this role? Have you attended council meetings? How many? And over what period of time?
I believe the first council meeting I attended as a resident of Murrysville was in 2006, and I was actually able to stand at this microphone over here to the side and speak at community input to advocate for the council making available office space for the newly elected Congressman Altmaier. I've taken an interest continuously since then. I've attended a good number of council meetings, not exactly regularly, but pretty frequently, and have spoken on several occasions, both in 2010, 2011, when the Marcellus gas issue first arose, and more recently last year and early this year. Thank you. Ms. Holt.
Yes, I've attended at least a dozen council meetings over the last year, and I've offered public input as a private citizen at many of them, mostly about Marcellus Shale issues. I've attended Planning Commission, Environmental Action Committee, and the Parks and Recreation meetings, simply just to learn more about them and how they work, and that gives you a lot of insight. I've read all the council meeting minutes for the last year online that I could find, and you learn a lot that way as well. I've read the 2015 budget summary and the capital improvements forecast, and of the new comprehensive plan. The other way to keep updated is to follow the Facebook groups that Franklin Regional Area and Murrysville have going online, and you learn a lot, especially about people sort of in my generation, millennials and Generation Xers, how they're feeling about just overall trends of the community. So,
thank you. Ms. Lee.
Excuse me. So I feel like a great deal of my preparation initially came from my career. I started as a classroom teacher and moved out of the classroom to leadership and education, and was a state reformer in the state of Delaware prior to returning. And now I'm in the corporate side of education, where I have an opportunity to capitalize on my own leadership skills, financial skills, and communication skills. But I also mentioned serving the community, and I have a great deal of community involvement. Starting, I think, when I was 9 years old and umpiring here, Christmas at Salem Crossroads, et cetera. Now I'm on the Planning Commission, which I mentioned earlier. And I will admit that I don't attend as many council meetings. I prefer to watch them from home so that I can compare them to my notes from planning, and I can continue to do research. And the social media that Allison mentioned, I certainly monitor those. Was in Washington, D.C. last weekend specifically to attend a conference on leadership and utilizing social media to help with community outreach, which I feel will be essential in my role as a planning commissioner or on council.
Thank you. Mr. Lorenz.
Well, I've attended a few council meetings over the years, but you know, that honestly, a lot of what goes on is it does not happen at the actual council meeting. I see people out and about in the community, so you know, people stop me on the ball fields and we have discussions. I'll see people downtown at lunch and have discussions. I'll see people in the grocery store. So a lot of that, the preparation for council, if you will, just comes from being out and about and in the community and meeting and understanding where the people are coming from, what their needs are, and where they'd like to see the community go. But prior to council, I was on the Planning Commission. And on council, I've been a liaison to the Planning Commission, to the EAC, as well as currently with the Parks and Recs Committee. So I'm active there as well.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Stewart Bain.
Yes, well, I started off coming to council meetings probably about 4 years ago. And my first council meeting, I actually chose to speak about the issue of fracking in our Murrysville Community Park and the concerns I had. I also spoke, I think, another time about that along with my son, who I brought with me. So I've been attending council meetings on and off since that time. And like Jamie Lee, I also watch them on TV when I can or on the computer. I also am a member of the Environmental Advisory Committee for the past year and a half. And I get to learn a lot about the issues facing the community by attending those meetings. And I'm working with the school district right now to implement a training for the children concerning our stormwater management ordinance. So, thank you.
Thank you. Our second question, we will begin with Ms. Holt. In what ways have you volunteered in this or any other community? What are the benefits to the community of volunteer service?
So I've been a stay-at-home mom since my first was born 11 years ago, and I've done a number of different volunteering endeavors that fit with the life of a mother. I've been on two nonprofit boards. One is the Children's Festival Chorus of Pittsburgh, of which I'm an alumni, and then one is the Calvary Early Learning Center here in Murrysville, which is a preschool. So those are two very different organizations, but they're both nonprofit and have budgets. And I have also I have volunteered in my children's Sunday school. What was the second part of the question, please?
Well, what are the benefits to the community
yes.
of volunteer service?
Oh, yes. I definitely think, especially in a municipality like Murrysville, that the more you can get volunteers involved, the more that the residents overall have buy-in to the overall process. It's super important.
Thank you. Ms. Lee.
So I'd like to start with the second part of the question in case I run out of time listing experience, but I certainly agree with Allison that the resident buy-in, the community buy-in is essential when you have volunteers. And I know that the council has worked very hard to maintain the budget in Murrysville, and part of that includes finding some creative sources of funding and capitalizing on the time and the efforts and the interests of volunteers. Personally, I love volunteering. I am never happier than when I'm serving others, so I have devoted my life to serving others. More recently, I am elated now to be on the schedule for Meals on Wheels. And I've joined AMVETS here, stemming from my experience, the Ladies Auxiliary for the Veterans of Foreign Wars, the Military Order of the Cootie Auxiliary. If you've never heard of it, it sounds silly, but our motto is keep them smiling in beds of white, and we specialize in trying to cheer up and visit hospitalized and disabled veterans. Was chair fundraiser and public relations officer for the Clam Jam Benefit Committee, which was in Delaware, to serve local terminally ill children and to send them to Kay's Camp. And I'm going to stop there. I thought I was going to run out. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lorenz.
Volunteerism is really the backbone of every community, and we couldn't get done here in Murrysville what we do without our volunteers. It just simply couldn't happen. I volunteer in a number of respects. What I've done in the past, I have a past president of the Murrysville Area Soccer Association. I am currently the director of coaching and player development. I coach at least 2 teams. It's hard to keep track sometimes. So I'm certainly active there. As far as other efforts, my wife and I historically we've taught Sunday school for a number of years. And an organization called Rebuilding Together Pittsburgh, which you maybe have heard of, they go and do projects for low-income families that cannot afford those. I was one of the people who started their annual fundraiser here in the Pittsburgh area a number of years ago, and I'm proud to say that's still going and thriving to this day.
Thank you. Ms. Bain.
Yes, well, as I spoke about earlier, I have volunteered for the past year and a half on the EAC, and along with that, I also am a weekly volunteer in my children's school, helping them with a program called Kids Writing. And there's a lot of parents that do that, and I get to see some amazing progress from kids going in kindergarten, not writing it all to the end of the year where they're writing full stories. And that is just one example of how volunteer work helps a community. There are many other ways, and I think I'm just repeating what everyone has said at this point, but you know, that's what keeps a community strong, is when we invest in it. And that's also why I'm running. This is something that I feel will make a community stronger by us working together. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Skiers.
When we first came to the community, we lived 5 minutes from my workplace. A short time after that, it moved to Cranberry, and my time for volunteering seemed to be really splintered. But I have maintained one, probably unlike anything anyone else here has, a consistent involvement in partisan politics, which I embrace, and I'm really proud of, because it's driven not by an interest in the political result, but in public policy and what's happening in the world. And I've taken some of that also into my church, where I help to facilitate a Sunday school discussion of adults about how to our faith and public life interact. So I think, as has been said, volunteerism is really critical and important, and that's my time.
Thank you. We'll start with the next question. We'll start with Ms. Lee. What is your vision for Murrysville, and how can it be achieved?
So very simply, my vision for Murrysville is for it to be the kind of community that offers the same opportunities that I had as a child and that I now enjoy as an adult here. And I think that what is underlying that, we need to maintain, I know it's been said several times, but controlled, responsible growth in Murrysville. We want to be a community that offers convenience and amenities to our residents, but by the same token, we don't want to be a community that residents are trying to leave so that they can go find rural areas. So we really need to balance to make sure that, again, we have those amenities and controlled growth, and so that we're not putting our residents' safety or health at risk, that we're not hurting the environment, the beautiful, incredible parks that I know have been mentioned, that we can maintain and balance that.
Thank you. Mr. Lorenz.
It doesn't take a long time to figure out that Murrysville is a special place. And those who have lived here, 50 years or 15 like myself realize that and want to make sure that it's kept that way. I think that the controlled, managed growth of Murrysville is key, and we want to make Murrysville a place that everybody can work, live, and play. And those things need to be in harmony with one another. From a workplace standpoint, I think that we do need additional office space, and that's certainly on the way. We have retail and restaurants and commercial. It's also coming in. We also want to make sure that it's a place we can live. We want to have adequate and appropriate housing for everyone here. We also want to make sure that it's a great place to play, increase our ability to use our parks. We have a great trails committee that, again, volunteers to do that, and our fantastic recreational programs that we have here in Murrysville.
Thank you. Ms. Spain.
Yes, I believe that my vision for the future is, as others have stated, a slow and steady growth for the community. It is something that, will happen is basically through an effort by the community to understand what happens when you grow too fast, as opposed to when you grow too slow, and the financial implications of going in either direction. I also have a vision for our parks, because that is a very important part of what makes Murrysville unique. I spend probably 4 days a week at the parks. My children are in soccer and in baseball, and I go jogging in the parks, and there's so many great things to occur in those parks, and I want to see those parks continue to grow and be utilized by the community. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Skiers.
My vision for Murrysville takes a slightly different direction. My vision involves an engaged and informed citizenry of residents who take an interest in their local government and participate in it, interact with it. I have seen in the time we've lived here that it can be varying degrees of responsiveness of local government, and one common reaction of citizens is, my voice isn't heard. I really look toward everyone's voice being heard and everyone realizing that they have a voice and that they should express it. I think if that happens, then all of these material benefits that we've heard about will come along naturally.
Thank you. Ms. Holt.
I agree that to launch a vision, you need to be well engaged with the public, absolutely. And I think part of the vision also has to be for the long term. I don't think that the council has had a short-term vision. They have been very good about looking at the long game rather than the short-term game, and I think that is absolutely critical for any community that wants to remain attractive to new residents and to retain the residents that they have. We want people to come, we want them to stay, and because that's how you build community, not when you have a lot of turnover. The one area that hasn't been mentioned that I think would be really important for Murrysville to consider, and it's in the comprehensive plan, is walkability. We have some dense areas, we have some areas where people are biking and there isn't a good median. I think that walkability should be one of our priorities going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question will begin with Mr. Lorenz. What do you see as the most challenging problem facing the community today, and how should Murrysville address it?
Well, I don't know that's necessarily a problem. It's a potential problem, and that would be our land use. As a member of the Comprehensive Plan Committee that just wrapped up, that was over a year and a half, where we looked at where Murrysville is now and where we project it to be over the next 10 years. And we look at everything from housing to commercial development to recreation and everything that would touch upon those things. And when you're looking at a community like Murrysville, and again, it's a unique place, Murrysville's not Monroeville. And Murrysville is not Pittsburgh, it's Murrysville. You have to make sure that the uses of the land are compatible with one another. So I think that looking at the comprehensive plan, looking where we want to go down the road, 10 years, what we have to do is with the comprehensive plan also comes a review of the zoning. And I think we have to take extra care to look at our zoning and make sure that we're doing an appropriate job there.
Thank you. Ms. Bain.
Yes, as I said in my opening statement, I think the safety and health of the community going forward is going to be one of the primary problems that we're facing, most notably with the Marcellus Shale development and how that will impact our community. I have obviously spoken about it at meetings, and I have concerns about what takes place in the future around our schools, which probably would not happen near that, but our parks and our homes and in their residential areas. I believe it is something that should be put into industrial zones and not something that would be close to where we live and play. So.
Thank you. Mr. Skiers.
Well, as I alluded in my opening statement, I also agree that the Marcellus Shale gas issue is a key importance, and that just judged by the amount of time that council has spent on it. There's been a task force meeting for several months now, and we learned on a meeting this week that they're very near to reporting out to council and the planning commission. So I think we have to stand by and see how that looks. There's a lot of issues in preparing for this. I've really gotten interested in zoning history and zoning practice around the country, and I think that is really key, and it's going to be a fascinating thing if people pay attention, and really it's the key to solving it and finding a solution that people can live with.
Thank you. Ms. Holt.
I have to agree, and zoning and the Marcellus Shale issue are completely intertwined. There's no way to separate the two. I think the most pressing, challenging problem is enacting and enforcing the right oil and gas ordinance. And, and there's a few reasons why. The drilling industry has boomed extremely quickly, and the EPA and the DEP and local governments are playing catch up. And so whoever is elected to the next council has to have a thorough working knowledge of the legal realities, of the science, and a deep commitment to protecting the constitutional rights of the residents. That's paramount. That's first on my list. So if Murrysville gets this wrong, it cannot be undone. That would be why it's such an important issue.
Thank you. And Ms. Lee?
So I feel like I need to step back a little bit from Marcellus Shale and zoning, which we all know are major concerns, but I feel that the biggest challenge facing Murrysville is working to maintain a stable tax base with appropriate development so that we can manage to ensure that we get as many tax dollars as possible with as little impact to the community. And under that, we have major health concerns with Marcellus Shale. But there may be financial benefit, and there's landowners who are concerned about making sure that they get the money that's due to them. Zoning, we have the same thing. We've got benefits, you have pros, you have cons when we're looking at zoning. We want to make sure that we attract the right businesses, but that we don't alienate our small businesses and our small business owners. And I think that the remedy to that is the informed citizenry, helping our residents to understand, looking when Speedway came before the council, when it came before the planning commission. Our residents on Cohasset Court right now, many residents who aren't aware that right where their happy suburban neighborhood is, they're surrounded by business properties or R3. And that's my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question to council, we'll start with Ms. Bain. What management and budgetary experience will you bring to this position?
Wow, yeah. Well, I've run a mental health agency for the past 15 years, so I have close to 50 employees currently. I've grown it from a business with approximately 5 employees to where it stands today. Being director of this agency has allowed me, obviously, to sharpen my financial skills. And since my background was not in business or management, I had to educate myself. For instance, I took classes on how to write an employee handbook and then went and wrote one for my agency. I also deal with workmen's compensation and unemployment issues, hiring and termination. I have learned to be a good director. I have also learned to have good people surround me, such as my office manager, accountant, and lawyers, and most importantly, my administrative staff. Running a successful business takes a team approach, just like being on council. And I think that has made me, given me the experience that I need to be a council member. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Skiers.
I've had varying levels of budget responsibility over the years in different projects on power plant instrumentation and upgrades. But I don't think that that's really what's critical. I think what's most important is the ability to ask questions and examine the work that's presented to me as in a position of oversight and review responsibility. I have begun to study the budget. I think that the council and the administrative staff has done a good job recently of budgeting, and I think things are pretty well in control. There was talk earlier in the day or in the evening about school board pensions, and that's one area where I think that the municipality really has excelled. That our pension plan is in pretty decent shape and getting better. So other than that, I'll just help to oversee.
Thank you. Ms. Holt.
Yes, I think that probably all new council members have a steep learning curve, and a steep learning curve is actually a good thing. It means you're coming up to speed. And I think as much as a budgeting experience, it's looking at the line items, and really getting to understand, oh, this is where the large amount of money is going. This is where the planning for the future is going. And so it's close reading skills. And I have to say, I have been very impressed by the municipal staff at Murrysville as I've seen them work. I think that council works very well with particularly Mr. Morrison and the financial officer that we have here. And so rather than micromanaging, which was alluded to earlier with the school board, it's an oversight capacity. And so you ask questions and you provide oversight. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lee.
So I mentioned that when I was an educator, I sought and obtained grant funding and learned very early on that it's helpful to look at every possible resource. When I moved into the corporate sector, it kind of had a wake-up call, and I got to learn quite a bit more about contracting, about subcontracting, and as I developed myself in a leadership capacity, learned about allocation of resources. I work very hard within my company to routinely review our budget and to ensure fiscal feasibility and responsibility. And I've also spent time learning from our budget within Murrysville and looking at the ways that Murrysville has partnered, has worked to consider partnerships, grants, really capitalizes on its phenomenal volunteers. And as Allison noted, I think we have a major advantage in that the administration here works so smoothly, so that I know that if I have questions, I can always go to them, and then anybody in the community can. You don't have to be on council or a commission or a board to be able to get that information and to learn.
Thank you. And Mr. Lorenz.
Well, I have been through 3 budget processes since I've been on council, and I can attest that yes, we do have a wonderful staff here. They do a fantastic job. You know, we do ask questions. We make sure we understand things, and you know, we haven't raised taxes since my time on council, and in large part that's due to efficient management. That comes in many ways and in many respects. If you look at the various committees that we have that advise council, they're sort of the first gatekeepers, and they sort of ferret through a lot of these issues. So by the time that it gets to council, we're able to really narrow in and make sure that the finished product that actually comes out is the best that we can do.
Thank you. Next question, we will begin with Mr. Skiers again. Are you familiar with the Home Rule Charter? What's your understanding of the division between the council and the administration?
Yes, I am familiar with the Home Rule Charter. I've read it and I've found it to be a pretty interesting document. Basically, it's just a legislative function that the council has. Pass ordinances. The administrative staff runs the day-to-day things, and they report to the mayor, and the mayor and council work together to oversee that. Don't even think I need the full time.
Yes, I'm
Thank
familiar.
you.
Oh, sorry.
Ms. Holt.
Yes, I'm familiar with the Home Rule Charter, and you can find a copy online. It's interesting reading. It came out of the 1970s, and it's been kept well up to date. And I think the idea with it initially was just to give Murrysville control over our local governance, and so that is the idea of the Home Rule Charter. And so council in its capacity provides oversight. It's the legislative branch, and the mayor has a particular role as kind of the boss, as it were, of the staff, and the council then continues to play its role with the oversight, and I think it works pretty well, and I don't have any corrections to make.
Thank you. Ms. Lee.
It's going to be hard to add a whole lot to that. Certainly, I think we're familiar with the Home Rule Charter and its spirit of retaining rights for local control, particularly were not reserved by federal or state constitution. As council, it retains the legislative aspect, the budgets, the budget amendments, development. Our mayor has more of our executive role and is a great public face for us, whereas the administration, which I mentioned earlier, we're grateful to, public works, safety, finance, they're the day-to-day experts. They keep this municipality running, and without them, I think we'd really be lost. I certainly couldn't suggest any changes right now, although I've reviewed it having not served on council and for a lengthy period of time. I can't criticize a document that I haven't actually lived and breathed.
Thank you. Mr. Lorenz.
Well, I will not rehash all that has been said. All I will say is if you have not read the Home Rule Charter, please do. It will help to enlighten you as to why some of the decisions are made the way that they're made, why some of the things come up for votes the way that they do, why we have certain processes and procedures in place. The vast majority of that is set forth right in the Home Rule Charter. So if you haven't read it, take a look.
Thank you. And Ms. Bain.
Yes, as the other people up here. I also have read it. I don't know what to add. Administration is the mayor, legislative is the council. And I found it interesting, though, that I never realized that the mayor could veto things. I'm not sure if he ever has, but it would be interesting to see how that would play out. And I've, pretty much that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you. The next question we will begin with Ms. Holt. Have you become familiar with the Murrysville Comprehensive Plan, and do you have any recommendations for its improvement?
Oh, recommendations for its improvement. I did read the comprehensive plan and actually spoke before council. Mostly, I think the longest discussion that I was aware of about the comprehensive plan was about the energy resources paragraph. So I simply wanted it to make sure that it did not insinuate that that the municipality would give away any of our residents' rights. And I'm happy with it how it came out. I really liked the section that talked about revitalizing our some of our older neighborhoods. And one idea in there that has been floated around is South Murrysville, the area near the community center or the old library, to make it walkable, to make it mixed use. I think it would be perfect for a twinkling light restaurant someday, and it would be a delightful place to spend an evening.
Thank you. Ms. Lee.
I certainly have read the comprehensive plan as well, and certainly studied it. I appreciate that it seems to take a conservative approach to protecting our residents and preserving our environment and our community. And I really appreciate its forward vision for long-term planning to make help Murrysville to stay the place that we love. I don't know that I have any criticisms of it, anything that I would particularly change, although I would like to see that continued community outreach. I know a large part of the comprehensive plan focuses on zoning, and certainly among our objectives is to increase R3 or our high-density housing. We know that we have an aging population. We have less traditional families that might be seeking more of the higher-density housing, the townhouses, the apartments, the condos. And I think that helping residents to understand what that can look like for our community and what that can feel like without detracting from the quality of life here, that's a concern that I've been hearing quite a bit from residents. So I'd want to emphasize the educational outreach portion.
Thank you. And Mr. Lorenz.
Well, I was a member of the Comprehensive Plan Committee, so I had an active role in going over, reviewing that, working with our consultants. We met regularly and discussed a whole host of issues, had public forums where people could come and give their input on that, and had public hearings here at council on multiple occasions about that. So I'm proud to say that I was a member of that committee. I'm proud to say that, yes, I have read it. Portions of that I've even wordsmithed a bit. So I think it's an excellent document. I think it is an improvement over prior versions, because one of the things that we really aim to do is we wanted to make it usable. This is not something to just be set on a shelf somewhere. This is something that we want to be able to use and implement and have it be a guide for how Murrysville can grow into the future.
Thank you. Ms. Bain.
Yes, I also have read the comprehensive plan. I believe that, there are some great things in there, one of which is the encouraging others to volunteer, and also the get-togethers, which I'm not aware of having any of those for the community very often. So perhaps that is something that we need to publicize more and make the citizens more aware of, is that we are here to hear their voices and to take their thoughts into consideration when making decisions. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Skiers.
As Ms. Holt alluded, there is a vision for one particular part of Murrysville, South Murrysville, in the hope of making for a more walkable, more mixed use or pedestrian friendly neighborhood. I have some concerns. I think there are some logistical problems with that, one of which is just getting across 22 to enjoy life over on South Murrysville. So that's one area that I think I'd like to look a little more closely at if I get the chance on council. Another area that is really important to me is, and also came to it from looking at the energy paragraph, but it's not there. It's elsewhere. It's in objectives, section 7 of objectives, I believe, about energy conservation and improving construction and adopting energy conservation into that. I think use of LED lights and, for me, solar panels, which I'm personally committed to putting on my own house.
Thank you very much. The next question we will begin with Ms. Lee. It has become increasingly more difficult to entice local citizens to volunteer for boards and commissions in Murrysville. Do you have any suggestions for how to make such volunteer opportunities more appealing?
So that's a challenge that I hear, and I have a lot of folks who say to me, you're so young. It's usually so hard to get volunteers in, and what makes you want to volunteer? And do you have any friends that want to volunteer? And unfortunately, I really don't. I think that, frankly, with the millennials and the next generation, one of the best ways to reach out to volunteers who haven't been doing the same work for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, they're tired. So I think that the best way to encourage volunteerism is to reach out to the millennials, to utilize social media, whether it's Facebook, which we have a lot of folks that are on, YouTube videos, whether we're using Camtasia or Snagit to snag little videos. There's a lot of emerging technology that younger generations, Instagram, are using. And I think that if we can explain to folks what each of the components, what each of the boards, committees, commissions does, help folks to understand that the time commitment's really very little. It's as much as you choose to put into it. And then we reach out to folks on levels that they will see.
Thank you. Mr. Lorenz.
Volunteerism is certainly something that's an individual choice for everybody, and I think that our role as council is to try and make that as easy as possible for people to do. I think what we need to do is to make sure that people know what is available out there, what opportunities are available for people to volunteer, and to make it easy for them to come to the municipality and to actually volunteer in that role. So if you've noticed in the last few years, one of the things the municipality has been really actively doing is updating its website, doing a better job of getting the word out there. A number of the committees now are using email blasts to get the word out there. There is talk of using other social media as well, because that's becoming much more commonplace. The other thing we're doing is we're centralizing our volunteers, particularly with our parks. And the idea there is to make it so that people can come to one place and say, hey, we'd like to do this, and then we can apportion them appropriately. So, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bain.
I thought a little bit about this because I've volunteered for the EAC for the last year and a half, and we've had some difficulty getting people on there. Recently, we've gotten 2 new members, which is wonderful. But I think starting off by educating our children about the importance of volunteering, making it a part of our culture, would be helpful. I think if we bring our children to meetings, I actually did bring my son to our last meeting, although he did fall asleep halfway through. It would help them grow up to be more involved in our community.
Thank you. Mr. Skiers.
Well, if I really thought I had the full answer to this one, I'd be selling it, and I think I could do quite well. I don't. I have been involved myself in trying to stir interest for policy studies and civic action. It's tough. There's a lot of distractions, a lot of things that people get caught up in, and I alluded to that in my own life, in my trying to balance work and my activities. But I have some doubts about social media and the solution to that, because I see an awful lot of real deep activism on Facebook and Twitter, and it sometimes doesn't translate into out in the real world. And I'm still working on the solution to that, and I'm hoping we can find one to get people out.
Thank you. Ms. Holt.
Well, I have to say, coming here tonight, it was a pleasant surprise to realize how many of my mother's friends are in AAUW, and I have to commend that generation for the volunteerism that you have given to our generations. And I think the generation coming up, the baby boomers, as they retire, we do need to particularly target them for volunteering, not just millennials and Generation Xers who are still raising kids or whatever, but especially because that is the demographic that is growing so quickly, 30% increase in the last 10 years in Murrysville, something like that. So that group in particular, to make it welcoming, but I think we also need to include, the website at the moment is a little bit, I would consider it sterile. It's not, it doesn't really tell a story. It doesn't like invite you into what the opportunities are. So I would love to work at that communication, to bridge the millennials to the retirees, and thank you to the retirees who helped raise us.
Thank you. The next question is from the audience, and we'll start with Mr. Lorenz. Please explain the Murrysville Oil and Gas Overlay District. Do you think it protects the citizens of Murrysville, especially the air, water, radioactive waste material?
Well, I got the easy one.
Whoops.
Whoa.
I think that the best way to answer that is the current Murrysville oil and gas ordinance is under review. And I think if we as council believed that the current ordinance adequately protected the health, safety, and welfare of the citizenry, it would not presently be under review. It is under review because, among other things, the decision in Act 13, regarding Act 13, involving Robinson Township, among other municipalities, has given credence and some weight to a provision in the state constitution regarding clean air, clean water. And that is one of the impetuses that we as council have empowered the Marcellus Task Force to re-examine that ordinance and to strengthen it as appropriate.
Thank you. Ms. Bain.
So the Marcellus Task Force has recently developed this document that he spoke of, and we've yet to see that yet, so it's kind of hard to speak to that. But as he said, there was a reason for that being done over the past year, and I want to thank everyone who has worked so hard on that document, which I'm eager to see. And as he said, there is, the PA Constitution that protects our clean air, pure water, and our preservation of the environment. We need to be aware of that and protect the citizens of this community and those resources. There will be issues coming forward of who do we, protect, whose rights do we protect, and it's a balancing act, one that we have to take very seriously, and make sure our ordinances are in place that will that we can defend legally. So yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Skiers.
Well, I mentioned earlier having spent some self-study time on zoning, and overlays are a really fascinating subtopic of zoning. Overlays mostly are provisions that add a little extra protection or a few extra requirements for an area that's already zoned. In this case, the oil and gas overlay really doesn't do that. It cuts out an area that and makes sort of special provision for different parts of the same zone area. So I have some reservations about the oil and gas overlay as it was enacted. I think it was an honest attempt to find some kind of a compromise at a time when the legal landscape was really against council. That's changed now, and I think, well, I hope that the new task force has taken that into account.
Thank you. Ms. Holt.
Yes, so I have been involved on the task force for the last 7-8 months, something like that. The overlay, I agree with Dennis. It was an attempt to drop an industrial use on a residential area known as our rural residential. The tricky part is that in Murrysville, rural residential has a number of uses currently permitted there. And so I think as part of this, the look at a comprehensive zoning evaluation that really does need to occur coming up soon, that needs to be teased apart. As it stands now, I think the overlay is legally challengeable because I don't think that the 2011 ordinance protects particularly the residents within the overlay's rights to living in a residential zone.
Thank you. And Ms. Lee.
Last again. So I certainly agree that as it stands, it is challengeable, and as Susan stated, that right now what we're going to have to look for is a balancing act that really protects residents and also landowners' rights. As a resident who plans to live here until I die, I'm very grateful that they're revisiting the ordinance. I am confident that as a community, with the innovative technology, I feel like a lot of drilling companies, well, some drilling companies are trying to be responsive to the outcry. They're looking for more creative ways to recycle, to reuse, and to limit damage with wastewater. I don't know if it's enough right now. And so I do feel, though, that council, with public input, the task force, that technology, that we'll be able to reach a compromise that does protect the health and the well-being of residents, that does protect the environment, but doesn't take away or greatly diminish rights of landowners.
Thank you. The next question will begin with Ms. Bain. Do you believe that the unconventional hydraulic fracking, which the Pennsylvania Supreme Court has declared an industrial activity, should be restricted to industrial zones?
Oh, I believe I answered that in my earlier question. Yes, I do, to a degree. I definitely do not believe it belongs in residential areas. I don't know too many people who would actually want it close to their home. I don't believe it's, should be near any of our parks, our schools, anywhere that, we breathe air. Yes, so that's my answer.
Thank you. Mr. Skiers.
I would say at least restricted to industrial zones. There are a lot of other considerations. Everybody's water comes from somewhere. That's a line from an important documentary about the industry called Triple Divide, and it comes from an area in Pennsylvania where the water falls on the ground and can go any of three directions because it is a continental triple divide. So at least it should be an industrial process in an industrial zone. Murrysville is limited in the amount of industrial zoning it has, of course, which complicates life and probably is what led to the compromise in the first place. It's something that really it takes some careful attention, but that's that's a starting point, I would say.
Thank you. Ms. Holt.
So the fracking issue, I've spent hundreds of hours reading about it in the last year. So yes, it is absolutely a risk to our health, welfare, and safety. There was last night an explosion, a lightning bolt hit a fracking well pad in Denton, Texas, which just tried last year to ban fracking. So it is an ongoing, entire America engaging issue. There are things that can be done at the local level to protect citizens, and primarily the way you protect citizens is by setbacks and zoning. And I just want to touch on setbacks real quick. So I had an email exchange this week with Dr. David Brown, toxicologist with the Southwestern Environmental Health Project, and I specifically said, how close is safe? This is the question everybody needs to know. And his response back was, I quote, "The research we're aware of doesn't establish a safe distance, but certainly indicates that anyone less than half a mile from a source is at risk of significant exposure." So we have to look at the science and we have to look at the legal realities.
Thank you. And Ms. Lee.
I think seeking to immediately restrict drilling to industrial zones does open us up to litigation and does open us up to some very unhappy residents. But I feel that their unhappiness needs to be considered with the spirit of protecting our residents. Absolutely. Limitations, setbacks, very high performance bonds. But I do believe that with expert testimony, with research, and then strong consideration for resident input and resident safety and well-being, that we will reach a consensus.
Thank you. Mr. Lorenz.
I think the key is one of my opening remarks was that we need to have compatible uses with compatible uses. And what we need to do is make sure as a municipality that we are arranging those uses appropriately. There are reasons why we don't have garbage dumps next to residential neighborhoods. We need to make sure that in our upcoming zoning that we are very closely looking at that, and certainly the Marcellus Shale Ordinance is going to be part and parcel of that. We need to make sure that we are protecting everyone and that we are striking a legal and an appropriate balance that protects everyone's rights.
Thank you. The next question will begin with Mr. Skiers. Can you think of ways in which the school district and the municipality can work together for mutual benefit? What decisions of the municipality impact the school district?
Well, I think there are some limitations on how that gets done exactly. There certainly are constraints because they both, each of the school board and the municipality have their own roles carved out for them. I don't know. I think the fact that there's a resource officer at the school is just one point of interaction of the school and the municipality. Public safety is vital to the school district as it is to everyone else. So there's that. I don't know that there's really anything else obvious to me that comes to mind.
Thank you. Ms. Holt.
Yes, I mean, I think we all live here, and the children go to school here, and so we have a number of mutually aligned goals, but there are differences. And one of the tensions I recently learned about is that the way the tax dollars are split up, residential zoning brings in a lot of money to the municipality, because all of your earned income tax comes to the municipality, but only 10% of your tax dollars go to the municipality, and 76% or so go to the school district. And so the school district does very well. They get a burden from typical residential zoning, but they get more of the commercial development tax dollars. So that's one thing to balance, because we all want a balance. And the other thing I think that could be improved is a smaller item is to for everyone's sake, to improve walkability near the school grounds. I really think that we need to consider getting sidewalks, School Road, and Old William Penn, I think, really need to be prioritized for that, for the safety of children.
Thank you. Ms. Lee.
So I think one of the advantages we mentioned with the Home Rule Charter earlier was the municipality remaining or maintaining its autonomy, and I think that it's ideal that the school board and council function separately. I think they do an excellent job of working together to support one another, to share facilities. For example, I believe the school board now has its meetings here so that they can be televised, can reach out to the community. And I think that they do an excellent job of sharing that supportive relationship and being careful not to step on each other's toes, so to speak, to encroach into each other's territory. The only thing I can think in terms of improvement really is to continue what they're doing, to work together to promote events and opportunities to residents, and maybe even to increase that.
Thank you. Mr. Lorenz.
Well, as was mentioned, there are a number of ways that we do work together. Probably the most successful one has been the school resource officer. That's a shared cost between the district as well as the municipality. The school resource officer is a police officer that is in the schools. So that's something that over the years I think everybody can agree has been a benefit to everyone, most notably our students. Another thing that has come up in the last few years is the televising of the school board meetings, and council has offered its facilities here so that those can happen, so that the citizens can see those meetings at home. There's oftentimes people who just can't get out for whatever reason, so that's something else that we've been working on and has come to fruition. I can also say, as a member of council, we're always looking for synergies. We're always looking to work with them, and to the extent that those possibilities exist, we certainly explore them.
Thank you. Ms. Bain.
I'm not sure how much more I can add to what they've said, but what I can say is right now I am working with the school, with the teachers at Heritage, to try and come up with a curriculum to implement our stormwater management program, which would then teach the children about why it's important to not pollute, not to put chemicals on our lawns that could wash into our stormwater, and therefore, you know, it's trying to get them to take that information back home to their families and to spread that information to the community. So I think what happens here can also be taken into the schools and spread through the schools into the larger community, and it can work well together.
Thank you. The next question is from the audience, and we will start with Ms. Holt. How will you make decisions if there is no ordinance or precedent for reference?
Oh, that's interesting. Well, it's hard to imagine there being no precedents whatsoever, and I think if there were no precedents rights whatsoever, I would have to defer to the solicitor's opinion and my fellow members of council for any sort of ability to contextualize the issue that's appeared.
Thank you. Ms. Lee.
I feel that as a member of council, you're elected. You're elected because you serve the community, because you serve the residents. If there were truly no precedent, I think I'd have two and a half, 3 priorities. The first would be to conduct research, certainly to understand what the facts are, if there's precedent in any other community, communities that are similar in terms of demographics, environment. And then reaching out to citizens, reaching out to the residents, just talking to them, doing what a lot of us are already doing, talking to folks in our neighborhoods, you know, door to door, talking to folks in the grocery store, at the gas station. And then that's where I said 2.5, because based on what I heard from others and why I'm running for council to serve others, then I would look to my conscience, to my morals, and see, consider my empathy with residents and make the best decision that I felt that I could make for Murrysville.
Thank you. Mr. Lorenz.
Well, as an attorney, I deal in precedent all the time. That's our common law system is based upon precedent in large part. So there's usually something that gives us some frame of reference or some guidance or some signal as to where things should head. I think you also have to weigh into that your experience and what we've all experienced individually as well as in our professional lives and in our personal lives. That does play a part. You look to other similar situations. You know, you look at other communities who have faced similar issues and see what they've done, see what's worked, see what hasn't worked, how that can be improved upon. You have to do your research too. A lot of what a council member does is not sitting up here. It's researching, it's understanding the issues, it's talking with the people and getting a base of knowledge so that you can make an informed decision.
Thank you. Ms. Bain.
Yes, I'm not sure, again, what I can add to that. Honestly, I like to have the data. Part of my job is, as a behavioral analyst, is to look at the data. I look at what is the cause and what is possibly the effect. And so I would try to use my skills in my field of work to make decisions. I also often refer to people who know more about issues. So a lawyer, if it is a legal issue, or an expert in a different field, depending on what that may be. And lastly, what is best for the community is what I will always ask myself. And by getting the community's input, if it is a decision that would be difficult. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Skiers.
One thing that anyone who has used the internet surely has found that if you begin to do a search on Google, before you can get the question typed or the proposition phrased, you figure out that somebody has already thought of the same thing and somebody else has probably answered it. So it's a bit of a hypothetical question to me, and I'd really be interested to hear more that's behind it to understand what answer was being looked for. But I think there have been some good answers here, and I think that if there's truly no precedent in some problem one is faced with, or as a member of council, then you have to draw on your moral compass and just do what you find right.
Thank you. The next question, we will start with Ms. Lee. The term rural Murrysville has been discussed and debated for a very long time. How do you apply it to the future development of Murrysville?
Yes, it definitely has been discussed for a long time, and I've heard us called rural, bedroom communities, suburban. I tell you, I used to use MapQuest until I discovered the Westmoreland GIS viewer, and I was looking at maps of Murrysville not too long ago. I was looking at maps from 1967 and looking the topography from 1967, which it was the oldest map that I could really see the topography on, to 2013, their most recent. And then I looked around and went, oh, that wasn't there and that wasn't there. In terms of applying it to the future, I feel that I've probably already said it. We want to make sure that we have an area, a township that is a municipality that is convenient to residents and maintains its aesthetic appeal, but we need that green feeling too. We need to ensure that we have those parks, we have the plantings, whether it's sidewalks where new developments are going in, but so that we still maintain a small town feel. I think we'll always have a community though where, and I brag to my friends when they say, why Pittsburgh? We have the community where, sorry, we're out of time.
It's okay. You always finish your sentence. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Lorenz.
Well, you know, I think that the term rural Murrysville may have a different meaning to different people, but at least to me, what that means is it's a green suburban feel, and that was talked about at length when we were working on the comprehensive plan and what that meant to people. And when I think of Murrysville, what do I think of? I think of green space. I think of our parks. I think of the wonderful trail systems that we have. I think of the mom and pop restaurants and stores that we all enjoy. I think of a predominantly residential community, and and I think of our people that enjoy all of those things. So it's probably has a slightly different meaning to everyone, but I think at its essence, that's probably what it is.
Thank you. Ms. Bain.
Well, from working in Pittsburgh and being surrounded by people who live mostly in Pittsburgh, I can tell you that they believe that Murrysville is a rural community. But as somebody who lives here, I now know that we are a suburban community, and the rural comes from a feeling. I believe that rural feeling is what sticks with us and is what we need to protect. And I don't think there's much more to add to that, so thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Skiers.
I'm so pleased that this is left to me. It made me smile to see the bear on the stealing peanuts. That backyard that he stole the peanuts from is about 12 doors down from my house. So, that's my answer to people who say we're not rural. I mean, there's a bit of it still here. Unfortunately, one reason that bear finds his way into a backyard is because there's pressure on his habitat, and so I think it just goes to the real touchy balance of trying to allow and continue development and make for a better life for the people and not really ruin the life of everyone else who lives here.
Thank you. And Ms. Holt.
Yes, I think Murrysville should work to retain a rural residential district if it gets renamed, but that idea that to continue to have a rural residential district with a mix of farms and parks and low-density homes is really important. Now, council can't make the local small farms, which are all struggling, economically viable on their own. I think it would be a good place to do some marketing and some community outreach to say, if you want to keep it green, then support your farms and go to the Murrysville Farmers Market. I'd also like to just commend the Murrysville-based Westmoreland Conservancy. I attended one of their meetings recently, and they have 300 acres now that they're protecting for all of our enjoyment. And that is one of the hallmarks of a special community, is when a volunteer organization steps up like that and says, we will take care of these spaces and we will keep them for future generations. And so thank you to them.
Thank you. We're going to conclude this evening now, and I want to thank all of you for participating. There are 6 candidates for 3 available seats. So it's important. You can tell from the questions tonight there are a lot of issues that the community is concerned about. I hope what you heard makes you realize the important role that you as a voter play in influencing the actions of your local government and school board. Make your voice heard by voting May 19th. And once again, on behalf of AAUW, thank you very much and good night.
Thank you. If I didn't get another allergy pill soon, I think I was going to start choking.
It's an administrator inhaler. I'm like, please don't have an asthma attack.
Oh, well, thankfully I quit smoking a couple of weeks ago, which has been, but it actually seemed to suppress